5:45, thirsty work, this radio business. What we need is a little drinks trolley rumbling past, and oh my goodness me, there it is. What a divine thing that is. And fortunately, we have an ace producer to pick something wonderful off the trolley. What are we going for today, Suze?
Well, inspired by something that someone ordered in the pub at the weekend, which I hadn't heard for ages, a lager and lime.
Oh.
Half a lager and lime.
Yeah. That'd be quite nice.
With Rose's classic lime juice.
Classic.
Cordial, obviously. Thank
you very much. That's a splendid idea. Lager and lime, we'll have a half. Thank you. Today's confession comes from Nigel. I think this is all okay. Yes. This will probably provoke a little discussion, I imagine.
Oh.
Father Simon and the Holy Collective. Having recently retired as a school science technician, I feel the time is right to confess to an incident that occurred about 10 years ago, quite early in my career. For those who are unfamiliar with the role of a science technician, cast your minds back to your practical science exams at school and the lessons at school. Each time that you walked into a lab and spotted test tubes, chemicals, and exciting-looking pieces of equipment on the desks, it would have been a science technician who had diligently prepared everything, ready for you to conduct your experiments. As I was responsible for all the biology lessons in my school, I would also have the pleasure of preparing plants, flies, maggots, seeds, and sometimes body parts.
Body parts?
Animal, of course.
Oh, right.
For the coming lessons. It's all in the name of biology and science.
Of course it is, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Frankenstein. At the end of each week, the science teachers would tell me what lessons they were doing the following week so I could prepare everything in good time. One Thursday lunchtime, we all gathered in the science staff room, and one of the teachers said to me, "Oh, Nigel, you know that sixth form lesson with the pig's liver that I've asked for next Wednesday? I think I'm doing it on the Monday. Is that okay?" He did
talk like that, didn't he? Yeah.
No problem, I replied. I can pick some up on my way in tomorrow and pop it in my prep room fridge over the weekend. At that point, Archie, a physics teacher, piped up, "Make sure you don't put it next to any milk. Ha ha."
Different voice, yeah.
We all looked incredulously at Archie, thinking he'd possibly spent too long with his radioactivity experiments and had, at last, lost his mind. "What are you on about, Archie?" "Don't you know?" he said.
Don't you know?
I thought everybody knew if you put a piece of liver in the fridge next to a glass of milk, the liver moves towards the milk. You should try it. As we were, in fact, in a room full of science teachers, there were various responses along the lines of, "You're talking rubbish," or words to that effect. Okay, I said, "I'll set it up and I'll let you know what happens." So the following day, I placed a slice of liver on a white plate next to a glass of milk in my fridge and took some very scientific photographs involving rulers and stopwatches and left it over the weekend. Upon returning to school on Monday morning, I quickly checked the fridge and observed that the piece of liver was totally and completely unmoved.
Oh, no.
It was at this point, though, I was overwhelmed with an urge to grab a spatula and push the liver just a little closer to the milk.
Yeah.
And I confess, Father Simon, I was unable to resist this temptation. I gave it a little shove, leaving a bloody smear on the plate, and took another photograph. It's all right, it's a smear with blood in it.
Yeah,
so
yes, of course, that's what I thought.
I think Susie was disappointed.
Oh, right.
I quickly sent a team email to everyone, including the before and after photographs of this amazing phenomenon. I should point out that being just a few years in post and being a little more mature in years, I did have a reputation for being trustworthy and honest, and so my revelation was accepted as fact. There were numerous questions and discussions that week about how to explain scientifically why this should happen. Was it some kind of magnetic effect? Was there some unknown force at work here? Was it something to do with dark energy? Should we be checking our particle theory?
Oh, yeah.
Or was it maybe the work of the devil? Or some evil that was present in the fridge. Eventually, I did own up to my deception and was greeted with some steely, cold looks and shaking of heads for quite a few weeks. Consequently, I did find it hard to regain my credibility, but this was eventually restored for the rest of my time in school. However, several years later, I bumped into our ex-head of chemistry whilst on a course. He informed me he still had not forgiven me. So, Father Simon, I turn to you for forgiveness, not from the majority of my science teaching team, but from you and your esteemed colleagues, and of course from the aforementioned head of chemistry. I miss my colleagues greatly. We had great fun working together. Names have been changed to protect the guilty. Now, the bizarre thing about this is that this rung a bell with me. There is quite a well-known theory that milk and liver attract. And if you look it up online, on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy website, there is a liver milk magnetokinetic phenomenon being discussed. I'm just passing it on. That milk is magnetic. The liver doesn't move.
Milk is magnetic.
I'm just passing it on. Anyway, but as far as the sin is concerned, Sister Susie, what do you say to Nigel?
Well, Nigel, I like it. I do think it's very, very funny, but I do feel like, he was in a position of authority in the school. He had a reputation to hold up, and, it kind of just wasted everybody's time while they try and work out exactly what happened and why. And surely those science teachers should have been doing something better, maybe teaching the children rather than trying to work out why the liver moved towards the milk. And although it's very, very funny, I'm afraid, Nigel, I just simply can't forgive you.
Brother Matthew.
Yes, I've no problem with Nigel using his. So he had this reputation for being totally honest and straightforward, and he used that, didn't he, to be able to pull off this amazing prank. So well done to him. And he managed to provoke discussion about theories, and in a way, isn't that what science is all about?
Is milk magnetic when placed in a glass container?
I don't think it is. There's no magnets in my milk, and I know that for a fact. I looked this morning, definitely no magnets in my milk.
Yes.
So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, all right. So it's the people's verdict. That's what we need. Do you forgive Nigel, please, for his liver and milk prank? I suspect there'll be some people who have tried this because they've heard it as a rumour.
Well, I'm going to try it now.
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay. I mean, liver's pretty revolting, but still, anyway. Okay, the liver and milk confession from Nigel. Forgiveness or not? 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the news, we had a confession from Science Tech Nigel from a few years ago, and he was convincing all his scientific colleagues in the science room that actually milk and liver are attracted to each other in the fridge. Or maybe they're not. They're probably not, but it seems to be an interesting debate. Anyway, the confession was read out and the people's verdict is in.
So Ron in Macclesfield says, no, you can't fake test results. That completely undermines all of science. Absolutely not forgiving. But Kay on the Isle of Wight says, definitely forgiven. I used to enjoy the looks of horror when telling my patients about the steak and lemonade or Coca-Cola experiment.
What happens there?
The steak moves closer to the lemonade. No, surely
not.
not.
We need to know more.
And Viv finally says, forgiven. There could be a magnet in Matt's milk. If there was a magnet in the middle of the bottle of milk, Matt wouldn't see it, as you can't see through milk. So perhaps Matt's milk did have a magnet in it this morning.
But you're not in the confession.
No, I'm not.
It was from Nigel.
Correct, but I didn't have a magnet in my milk.
Did you not?
No.
You should try it next time.
I'm going to try.
Very entertaining. Your confession, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Well, I think we certainly are. Let's grab something from the passing drinks trolley. What have you taken for us, Suze?
I've taken 3 bottles of Bundaberg ginger beer with a nice big wedge of lime in each of them.
Bundaberg,
yes.
Is it German?
Correct.
Is it a bit like... And is there Bundaberg 1, which does all the kind of the fast flying action, then Bundaberg 2 for the slightly... This is an old TV reference.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Few people will have loved it.
Yeah, they loved it.
Today's confession comes from Maggie, Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Susie, Sister Holly, in the tack cupboard. My confession starts way back in the early 80s. I just left school at 15, looking forward to no more homework and non-stop partying with friends, because that's what being an adult is all about.
Yeah.
Our parties tended to be mostly last minute, each other's houses, and carry on to the early hours. We had one friend in our group who we shall call DJ Dave, who provided the entertainment at all of our parties. His only passion was DJing, and his biggest wish in life was to become a famous radio DJ. What kind of a fool dreams of such wonders?
Oh, dear.
DJ Dave liked to spend all his money on the latest gadgets and gizmos, lights that would knock the spots off Blackpool illuminations, or giant speakers that made all the houses in the street shake.
Oof.
He couldn't wait for the next party to come around where he would surprise us with his latest toy. One Saturday night, with another party arranged, I turned up in my latest fashions, my brand new 5-inch white stilettos and a bottle of Bacardi, which I'd stolen from my mum's drinks cabinet.
Okay.
Rock and roll! Also, it was stashed in a Woolworths carrier bag. How many old cultural references can we get in one sentence?
Yeah.
All ready to meet the usual crowd. DJ Dave was there setting up his decks, and on display was his latest gadget, a bubble machine that had numerous interchanging glass discs which made pretty bubble patterns on the ceiling, and then they cascaded down the walls. We were easily pleased back in the 80s. You could tell he was proud of his new purchase, as he couldn't stop bragging about how much they cost and that no one else had anything like it or could afford anything like it. No one had anything like it, etc., etc., said blah, blah, blah. I must admit it was a sight to behold, with everybody oohing and ahhing at the bubblers, whilst DJ Dave grinned like a Cheshire cat from behind his decks. As the night wore, I bet he wore a shiny jacket.
Definitely set that off.
And a bubble perm. As the night wore on, and the house became more packed with revellers, people were squeezing themselves into the lounge, and we started to resemble sardines in a tin, wanting to dance to the early hours, all getting lost in the cascading bubbles from above. Now, DJ Dave was getting worried about the amount of drunken partygoers who were straying too near the decks, and his bubble machine, in case it got broken or smashed, was constantly shouting and yelling at people to move away, waving his hands in a shooing motion. The party carried on to the early hours, and after a heavy night of hard partying and drinking, people were just starting to pass out on the carpet.
Oh, great.
Wow.
This is high class. I knew I needed to be up early, as I'd been reminded by my mum the night before that we were going out for the day and I could not be late home, so I was the first one to wake up. I think that means you're going to be late home. I started looking for my discarded white 5-inch killer heels. I found them and I slipped them on. With bodies sprawled everywhere on the lounge floor, still fast asleep, I tried carefully in my hungover state not to step or trip on any outspread hands or feet of the people on the floor. As the curtains were still drawn, I couldn't really see much in the dimly lit room, and all of a sudden I lost my balance, staggered back, and to my horror, knocked right into the table that housed the bubble machine.
Oh, no.
As I spun round, I could see the machine was starting to topple off the table and hit the floor with a loud bang, but I grabbed it just in time. My relief, Father Simon, was so short-lived as the large glass discs that were situated beside the machine had fallen onto the carpet, and in an attempt to quickly bend down and retrieve them, I somehow lost my footing again and stepped on the discs in the process in my 5-inch killer heels.
Oh, no.
My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my body, overdoing it a bit, and I didn't know what to do. Panicking, I looked around the room at the sleeping bodies, and realizing that nobody had seen what I had done or heard the sound of smashing and breaking glass, my only thought was to kick them under the nearest chair, out of sight, dart into the kitchen, as though nothing had happened. People were starting to wake up, and DJ Dave had emerged from one of the rooms to pack up his decks, lights and bubble machine. I knew the inevitable was coming, and it was only a matter of time before the evidence was found. And sure enough, from the direction of the lounge, a loud, piercing scream could be heard. From DJ Dave, "What the hell's happened to my discs?" That's where they tore back in the day.
They did.
People piled into the lounge, including myself, to see DJ Dave standing with open hands filled with broken and shattered shards of disc. The bubbles were no more. His face looked like he wanted to self-combust. Who would do that? Did anyone? What? Everyone shook their heads, including me, not daring to make eye contact, fearing my guilty face would give me away. At that point, I had to slink away. Or wobble away, maybe.
Okay.
DJ Dave never mentioned it again, and because of that, I knew I'd got away with it. As for the bubble machine, it never made another appearance to any more parties, and neither did my 5-inch heels. Father Simon, I seek forgiveness for the cowardly way I destroyed DJ Dave's prized possession and for the way I disposed of the broken discs, but mostly for not owning up to what I'd done, although I can imagine what Sister Susie has already decided, having heard what I got up to. Ha ha, lol.
Lol.
I don't know. Well, has Sister Susie already decided after I read that out? I suspect she probably has.
Well, Maggie, I've got a few things here. I feel like the error you made was when you put your shoes back on in the middle of the room. Because what you should have done, really, is held your shoes and tiptoed over the bodies and then put your shoes on once you got to the door.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that what happens?
Yeah.
That feels like the obvious way to deal with that situation. So, especially if they're 5-inch heels, you can't. You're lucky you didn't stand on someone's arm or limb or anything as you were trying to get them over. But also, I feel like DJ Dave doesn't. It sounds like a bit of overkill for a house party, doesn't it? All of that stuff, and I don't think he sounds like someone that I particularly like to spend any time with. So I feel like for that reason,
right.
maybe I'm on your side, Maggie. I might forgive you.
So you wouldn't book him to appear at the pub. Also, she stole a bottle of Bacardi, and we can't approve of that.
I mean, obviously
No,
we don't condone that, do we?
No.
That's quite a lot of talk about 5-inch killer heels. They're just shoes, aren't they? That's all they are at the end of the
tried
day.
with heels.
They're just heels with shoes. So I'm going to forgive because I also have my reservations about DJ Dave. Why are you bringing all of this equipment, Dave? No one's impressed. And also, if it's really expensive equipment, don't leave it in a house full of, young people who've had too much Bacardi the night before. You're hostage to fortune there, I think you'll find, Dave. And he didn't use it again, so he learned his lesson. So in a way, we all did. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
People's verdict, please, do you forgive Maggie for today's confession with her heels? 61054, first word is Simon. In a moment, but before the news, we had a confession which revolved around DJ Dave, a lovely bubble machine with some glass discs and some 5-inch killer heels, courtesy of Maggie. And when they met, I think the heels won. Here's the people's verdict.
So Jess in Worthing says, not forgiving Maggie. I remember those bubble machines from the 80s and they were incredible. The lights were mesmerising. Linda in Shropshire, though, says, I'm forgiving this purely because the DJ sounds like he needs taking down a peg or two. Those kind of blokes that wear sparkly jackets and spin the decks. They're always so cringe. And finally, Rachel says, I forgive Maggie as DJ Dave should have been insured.
Yes.
I don't, though, forgive Matt and Susie for not knowing Bundaberg ginger beer is from Australia, not Germany. It's a town in Queensland. Turns out Suze did know that this is a town in Australia.
Okay.
Just me.
Very good. And apparently there's some Bundaberg rum that goes very well with the Bundaberg ginger beer, which is a very nice thing. So your confession, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. This is Greatest Hits Radio. It's confession time, but only once we've gathered around the rapidly passing drinks trolley, which is, there it is. Are we going to have something soft or something harder than what do you think, Suze?
Well, kind of in between the two, I guess. I've gone for 3 tall glasses of Pimm's and lemonade with lots of fresh mint, cucumber, strawberries, and a slice of orange.
Okay, you could have mine. Thank you very much. Today's confession comes from Monty. Thank you, Monty. Father Simon and the team. Mike, don't judge on the basis of...
I think I will.
My confession harks back to an incident that occurred in the summer of 1985 and involves my mate Paul's engagement to a young socialite named Sarah. In fairness, Paul and I weren't particularly close, but I became friends with his mother, a big-hearted, if somewhat brassy woman, who we will all affectionately call Mrs. B. In December 1984, I was invited to Paul's birthday party, where we all met his then-girlfriend Sarah for the first time. It seemed a very chalk-and-cheese relationship. Paul came from a council estate background. Sarah resided with her wealthy parents in a large 6-bedroom house, complete with acres of land and a swimming pool.
Ugh.
But they say opposites attract. In the summer, I received my invitation to Sarah's estate to attend the couple's engagement party. I couldn't drive at the time, so Mrs. B offered me a lift. Before we set off, Mrs. B showed me an engagement cake she had baked and decorated to surprise Paul and Sarah. Her cake was covered in thick white icing, decorated with a cascade of marzipan roses coloured with bright red food colouring. Looking at it, you could feel the tooth decay setting in,
Yeah.
but it was a splendid
Fabulous.
effort.
Nice.
The venue was massive when we got there. Bunting decorated the outside patio and the grounds, and a DJ played loud music around the pool. Sarah's mum, Audrey, highlighted to us and other guests that the upstairs of the house was strictly out of bounds as they're having redecoration work. This included the upstairs bathroom, which Audrey was adamant should not be used by anyone, okay? She then pointed out a downstairs toilet we could use. Mrs. B couldn't wait to show off her cake and opened the Tupperware box to reveal the saccharin-infused cake to Audrey and Sarah's elder brother, Rufus. That, barked Rufus. That looks disgusting. I won't be eating any of that, before disappearing into the bar area. So we've got a big cast here.
Yeah.
Mrs. B looked crestfallen, and I'll be honest, I just wanted to give Rufus a slap, like the rest of us. Audrey then explained that she'd actually commissioned cousin Deirdre, who owned her own patisserie, to make a surprise engagement cake for the happy couple. But it reassured Mrs. B patronisingly that her cake wouldn't go to waste and would be included in the buffet with the rest of the food. Moments later, a 1980s bright yellow MG Roadster zoomed up the driveway. It was cousin Deirdre, car top down, with said engagement cake nestling in a flimsy cardboard box in the passenger seat. Audrey, Mrs. B and I went over to see. Deirdre took off the lid, proudly showed her creation. It was gorgeous. Delicate mauve sugar paste flowers, bedecked a rich white icing piped with soft white clouds, and the happy couple's names written in scrolled writing. Poor Mrs. B looked humiliated. Shall I bring it in? Because cousin Deirdre spoke like that as well. No, replied Audrey. You know how Sarah likes to hunt for surprises. Leave it in the car and park it round the side of the house, out of sight. It's shady there. As cousin Deirdre drove the car off, I took Mrs. B inside to console her with a bottle of baby sham that she'd brought with her. At some point, I have to say I needed the toilet, and as instructed, went to the downstairs bathroom only to find it locked in a small queue, and I was bursting. I took a chance and slowly crept upstairs, but as I reached the bathroom, I heard snoring. Opposite the bathroom, Rufus had collapsed in a drunken stupor on what looked like a chaise longue. There's a song in there. I briefly hesitated, but desperate, entered the bathroom and closed the door behind me. The bathroom seemed okay. The toilet was in working order. I did my business, flushed, washed my hands, and checking no one other than Rufus was outside, beat a hasty retreat from the bathroom, closing the door behind me. I made it down the stairs without anyone seeing me, with all the stealth of a master ninja, and no harm was done. Until about an hour later, when Paul and Sarah finally arrived to great cheers from the assembled crowd, and Audrey tipped the nod to cousin Deirdre to collect her glorious creation. And it was then we all heard the screams. Audrey led the charge, followed closely by Mrs. B, Paul, Sarah, and myself. We ran out to the side of the house where cousin Deirdre's open-topped car was parked and where she was wailing uncontrollably. It was then the full horror of my actions became apparent. Cousin Deirdre had parked immediately below the overflow pipe of the bathroom that I had been in when I flushed the toilet. What I hadn't realised was that said toilet had a faulty flush mechanism, meaning that the cistern kept filling up and wouldn't switch off. Consequently, water was now cascading from the overflow pipe immediately into the little yellow roadster, specifically the passenger seat, upon which Deirdre's precious cake was. The water had been pouring out for some time, and the flimsy box was now a disintegrated, soggy mess of cardboard, and the top of the cake a melted, congealed mess. "Who used the upstairs bathroom?" shrieked Audrey loudly. Her response was met by a stunned silence. And it was then that Sarah's dad appeared, dragging Rufus behind him. "I found this little Herbert upstairs," he declared. Audrey demanded to know if he'd used the forbidden toilet. Rufus said, "Dunno, might have. What's the big deal?" To which...
His voice has changed?
I know. To which... Oh, yeah, so it has. To which cousin Deirdre responded by launching at him with her handbag. "Serves him right," whispered Mrs. B. "Now I can use my cake." Anyway, the rest of the day was fraught, to say the least. All I wanted to do was leave. To make matters worse, Rufus was forced to clear up the mess made by the cake's destruction. Paul and Sarah split up a month or two later, not as a consequence of my actions, but the fact that they were the most mismatched partnership since Sam Fox and Mick Fleetwood presented the Brit Awards. And also due to Paul having an affair with an office girl called Karen. And they're happily married now. Anyway, Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Susie, I don't ask forgiveness from Audrey, Sarah or Paul. And on hindsight, I don't want forgiveness from the rude and obnoxious Rufus. I do want forgiveness from cousin Deirdre. I made a mess of her beautiful cake, her car, and stole her moment to shine. And I throw myself at your collective feet for a little bit of mercy, whatever's going. Do you have any mercy with you, Sister Susie?
Oh, do you know what? I don't know if I do have mercy for Monty, but there's a few things in here that, first of all, I have issue with. And that is, I know, obviously, cousin Deirdre's cake got destroyed and her car got destroyed, but why did she leave the roof open when she parked? Surely that's the first thing you do, is pop your roof back up, because what if it rained?
I don't know, maybe the forecast said it wasn't going to rain.
But yeah, I don't know. But that, first of all, that. But I do feel for Mrs. B, there's a lot of pressure when you make a cake, isn't it? And, you know, you just not nice to have that many kind of feedback about it. And she was only trying to be lovely.
Yes.
And I feel like, I don't know, Rufus wasn't very nice either, so I don't think I just feel like I'm going to have to forgive Monty, because I don't know, the other people weren't very nice either, so maybe they got what they deserved.
It was a story populated by people that you wouldn't want to hang out with. Really.
Oh, quite right, yes. I won't spend any time with Rufus and his ilk. Why aren't they fixing the toilet if they've got a swimming pool? That's what I want to know. No point in having a swimming pool if you can't fix your lav. Other point is, who leaves a cake in the car? Because if you put the top on the car, then the cake's going to melt. If you leave the top off the car, then, you know, water's going to come in, or squirrels or other things are going to come in and ruin it. You don't leave hamsters, a deer could come into the car. There's no point in leaving the cake, and it makes no sense. And maybe that's why they didn't fix the lavatory, because for that reason, I'm going to give
61054 on the text, please. First word has to be Simon. Do you forgive Monty, yes or no? 61054. First word is Simon. Before the news, we heard from Monty, a confession about an aristocratic engagement party. Monty used the toilet that he shouldn't have done, the broken toilet, which then flushed for about an hour onto the engagement cake. And then everyone broke up with whoever they were with earlier on. Anyway, the people's verdict, here it comes.
So Linda in Macclesfield says, forgiven. As Matt said, if they've got so much money, why is the toilet broken? Sounds like it needs a major repair. This wasn't Monty's fault. Michaela in Swansea, not forgiven. The fact he went upstairs when he wasn't supposed to is bad enough, but then he didn't come clean at the end, and that's disappointing. He should have put his hands up. And finally, Eugene says forgiven, because they didn't fix the loo, perhaps because they have a swimming pool, and we all know what people do in swimming pools. Anyway, forgiven, because frankly they all sound a nightmare.
They absolutely do. That's the Saltburn element. And if you have a confession, we would love to hear it. confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Well, what do I do? Well, what I do is, what you do is you send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And if we use it, you get a smart speaker. There goes the drinks trolley, and not a moment before we needed it. What have you selected from the trolley today?
Now, I've got 3 large glasses of rosé for us today. In particular, there's one in Aldi, which is called Atlantic Rose, which is a dupe for a very more expensive one. So if you can find that one, you should. Because
really? What is it a dupe for? What's the expensive one? That's a secret. Okay, probably
can't say
tell you
that.
Whispering Angels.
Oh, right. Apparently
really?
You can't say that.
One of those.
Fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's very good.
Yeah.
It might be.
That is obviously good as well.
Might not be.
That's the suggestion.
Might not be.
Good. Well, that's some helpful information. A little bit of a consumer feature, which this is becoming. Wow. So today's confession comes from Jolly Jack Tar. Thank you, Jolly Jack Tar, for sending this confession in. Simon and the team, as it's the exam season, I thought time has come to confess my dishonest, though in my defence, opportunist behaviour. I'm not sure that's much of a defence, really, but anyway. This was during a mock exam when I was at college. After all these years, I think I need forgiveness. I'm probably slightly older at the time of this confession than the students now sitting exams, so perhaps a little more worldly wise. My sin cannot be justified by the innocence of youth. I joined the Merchant Navy as a deckhand on leaving school, And after a number of years, I decided to enroll in nautical college to become a navigator. One of the requirements to pass the course was the ability to read and send Morse code at a set speed. The training for this involved the signals lecturer sitting outside the classroom in the corridor, sending Morse to a small light that was fixed above the door. We would all sit there in semi-darkness, attempting to decipher this blinking light. A mock exam was set up prior to the real thing, obviously. So we're a few minutes into the exam and there's a loud commotion outside in the corridor. The little light stops flashing and the lecturer opens the door and says, "Sorry, the other class are fighting again."
Of course they are.
I'll be back shortly.
Yeah.
Okay. Being an inquisitive type of person, I popped my head out of the classroom door to see a large melee of fighting youths, followed by our intrepid signals lecturer. And he was heading towards the end of the corridor and he disappeared out of the doors. Now, I didn't have to be Inspector Morse to realise, bit of map training to realise that the exam wouldn't be starting again for a while. The criteria for passing the exam involved being able to read a block of 20 random letters followed by a message of a few sentences. On returning back to the classroom, I noticed the lecturer's book was open on his desk in the corridor. In keeping with the theme, I had a light bulb moment and a message flashed through my mind saying, "Here's what he's going to send." And I proceeded to copy this and passed it around to all of the other students in the class. Not long afterwards, a rather dishevelled lecturer returned, apologised for the interruption and says, "I'll start again from the beginning." He's out there busily tapping away in the corridor whilst we're all sat at our desks with thermos flasks, we're eating our sandwiches, drinking coffee and totally ignoring the little light flashing away because we knew what the message was. Just before the end of the exam, we returned ourselves to keen student reading Morse mode and our papers were then handed in and the lecturer, after more apologies for the interruption, takes them away for marking. The following week, he returns to decipher the results. He announces, in a very surprised manner, that everyone's passed with a perfect score. He says, "You got all the block of letters and the message exactly right. Not one mistake or incorrect letter from anybody. But," he said, and there's always a but, "what you wrote wasn't the message I sent. What is going on?
Oh.
You've given perfect answers to a test I didn't set." He continued repeating, "I'm confused, I'm really confused." Now, I may add that being a nice chap, the lecturer was, with all respect, he was slightly gullible. It never seemed to have crossed his mind that there might be some sort of cheating going on. A full classroom of students sat there watching him, trying to grasp exactly what had happened. He left the room still muttering, "I can't explain it, I just don't know what's going on." It seems that when the fight went through the doors at the end of the corridor, it caused a draft which must have blown the pages of his book of messages over, meaning I copied down the wrong page. In following lectures, he was still in confused bewilderment as to what had actually happened. So Simon, Sister Susie, Brother Matthew and the crew, I'd like to ask forgiveness for not only cheating myself, but enabling the whole of the class to benefit from my actions. Obviously, cheating is always wrong and never can be justified. As we all grew up to be navigators, we obviously made sure we could indeed read and send Morse code at speed, and so continue this country's proud history of maritime genius, upon which our very freedoms rely. And I'm sure everyone agrees. I think that's a slightly pompous ending to the, trying to appeal to our patriotism. Anyway, Jolly Jack Tar sends in a nautical navigating confession. I don't think we've had many of those, so I liked it very much. Sister Susie, what do you say to Jolly Jack Tar?
Well, I just think it's cheating, isn't it? So I don't think I forgive at all because, it shows that cheating doesn't pay because you got it wrong. And how that professor just passed you in anyway is a miracle.
Yeah, because actually they all got everything wrong.
Yeah.
But they were the same as each other, but they were all wrong. I just no forgiveness for me. I think you should have just done it properly, because danger if you didn't do it properly when you actually were doing the actual job.
Sounds like a rough old college, doesn't it? If there's the other group are fighting again. Anyway,
you know what it's like,
Brother Matthew.
I mean, far be it from me to suggest that this professor at the Nautical College was a bit thick, but I'm gonna, because how does he not work out that they've copied it? They've all got the same message, so they've obviously copied it from
page on.
And also, this is the reason we have invigilators. This is the reason why you should have had someone in the room. Why have they not thought of this? So it's and somebody's going to take advantage, and Jolly Jack Tar did, and what he did in there was certainly nautical but nice. And for that reason, I'm gonna forgive.
No.
Really?
Nautical but nice?
No.
Genius.
Sorry about that, everybody. Anyway, so people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Jolly Jack Tar for today's nautical navigating confession? On the text, please, 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the news at 6 o'clock, we had another confession, a Morse code exam cheating confession. This is an exam for navigators. This is very important work. You can't cheat in this kind of an exam. Anyway, the entire class did, and the lecturer didn't spot it. People's verdict is in. Here it comes.
Forgiven, says Bill. I agree with Matt. How did the teacher not work out that there was something fishy going on? Terry in Cardiff. I forgive Jolly Jack, but I don't think he should have shared it with the whole class. That's the kind of behaviour that will get you found out. If you want to cheat properly, some of the class have to fail.
Terry knows what he's talking about.
Indeed. And Captain Pork says not forgiven, both for the confession and Matt for that pun. He should be locked in a soundproof booth with Barry Manilow on repeat for 24 hours.
I quite like a bit of Barry Manilow.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Maybe not non-stop for 24
Copacabana.
hours.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks for taking part. So your confession, please. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk.